Hey, sports parents. If we haven't met, my name is Jonathan Corona, and I'm the host of the show. Today's guest is Steve Magness. Steve is one of my favorite voices in the youth sports space. He has served as a performance coach for numerous professional teams, executives, Olympians, anything you can think of, he has coached them. He has also coached at the high school and college level, and he's written quite a few books. His newest is called Win the Inside Game, and it's out now wherever you get books. I can't recommend it highly enough. It is incredible. In our conversation, we talk about how the fear of your kid falling behind athletically can really paralyze you and make you make bad decisions, how kids are afraid of failure and what we can do to help, and the importance of unstructured play in their development. We also hit on a whole bunch of other smaller topics throughout the conversation. I know I say this a lot, but this talk was truly one of my favorites to record and was just a joy to be a part of. Before we get to the conversation with Steve, though, if you like the show today, we're going to ask you to rate us and review us wherever you're listening. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, writing up a small review would be a huge help. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Most of all, if this episode helps you in any way, the best thing you can do is share it with a friend. With all that out of the way, here's my conversation with Steve. We're here with Steve. Steve, go ahead and say hey to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, so before we get to all the things you do, the coach, the thought leader, the author, all those things, we want to meet Dad. So can you tell us a little bit about your kids? I know they're younger, but if they play anything and what it's like being dad to them overall.
Yeah, so my kids are both very young. One is just about to turn 2, and one is literally 2 months old. So,
do you have them sprinting yet, is the question.
Our 2-year-old literally runs laps around the house. So we're just like, my wife is also a runner. She competed in college and beyond. So we're like, this one is definitely ours. So no organized sports yet, but it's fantastic being dad. It's utterly exhausting having two under 2, but it's also completely fulfilling and surprises you every day.
Mine are 16 months apart, so I was in your shoes 7-8 years ago, so I know exactly where you're at right now. And like, your kid is a runner coming from 2 runners. My daughter, by the time this comes out, she will have run her second 5K 2 weeks before this. She's 9 years old. And she just has this natural ability to go run easily. And me and my wife are both like, where the heck did that come from? Because we do not have that. Like, I quit playing soccer in 5th grade because I didn't like running and it hurt. And my daughter just goes out and runs a 5K casually with barely any training. And I'm like, okay, sure, you do you.
It's funny how it works out, but that's how it was with actually myself. And then my wife was the same. Is like, somehow we became really good runners, and I'm looking at my mom and dad, and she does the same, and they're like, I don't know. It's just like, this is how it works sometimes. Sometimes you think it's like, oh, we're destined to do this, blah, 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 and sometimes it takes you out of left field, and I think that's kind of the fun part of having kids. You just never know.
Then my son's built like me, and he plays center forward in soccer, and he tries so hard to run well. He's out there pumping, like, and it's just like mud. He's trying so hard, and it's like if he could have just a little bit of sisters running, he could be dangerous out there. But he's trying. Like, and again, we'll get into this a little bit. He's only 8; it doesn't matter yet. Like, so, I told you this before we started recording, but I want to handle this episode a little like different than all of the other ones because your content gets shared with me more than any other person in this space. Like, that's how candidly, I didn't know who you were till a few months ago until everyone started saying, it's like this thread, this Instagram post. And it's like, who is Steve? Who is Steve? Like, well, how have I never heard of him? And then I binged like your entire Instagram feed one afternoon. I'm like, okay, yeah, I've got to send the message to get him on. So what I want to do today is I'm going to hit on some of the things people have shared with me the most. And then I just want to kind of dive a little deeper into those topics. So just to have an actual conversation around them, because threads and Instagram, it's one way. So the first thing is one of the things that we talk about on here quite a bit, but I would love your opinion on. And it says, there's no such thing as an elite 9-year-old athlete. Nothing really matters until after puberty. Let's stop the madness. Those are your words exactly. So It's not just you saying that. All the experts agree about it, but club coaches are telling parents that their kid will fall behind if they don't do all the things at 8 years old. I recently had a commenter on social media tell me I was doing my kids a disservice by not doing travel ball until middle school, saying that they're going to fall behind. There's no way they catch up. So how do you advise a parent to balance the tension between the truth that there are no elite athletes at 9 years old and the pressure that club coaches are putting on them to start doing everything now?
I mean, that's the central tension of it. It is we can intellectually know it. I can sit here and tell you study after study shows the same thing. And even we don't even have to look at studies. We can look at, I don't know, the 7-year-old records for the 100-meter dash, and Usain Bolt isn't on that list, right? So there's a reason for that, because again, puberty changes things and all that stuff, and too early specialization, which you can get into. But intellectually knowing that and then facing it with your kid and some coach or authority figure saying like, hey, you want the best for your kids, don't you? Like, everybody else is doing this. Like, this is what it is. That pressure can kind of feel overwhelming. And what I tell parents is we've got to have the ability to kind of like zoom out and zoom back and say, okay, I get it in the moment. This feels overwhelming that I'm making the decision that, you know, determines my kid's future career. But the reason I put these things out there and say these things is for that perspective moment of like, it feels like a big deal right now, but it's not. It literally will not matter, right? It does not. And we have all this evidence, as I said, but like you've got to be able to zoom out and see the big picture and say, okay, I get it. It feels like life or death right now if my kid makes it or not. But the reality is it's just like a fear. And it's just like this thing in my head that is just ruminating and trying to push me that way. But like any other fear we have, it's driven by kind of insecurity. And if you can be secure and, okay, this is why we do things, this is why we pursue sports at this point, what are we actually trying to get out of it? What do I want my kid to actually learn in these moments? Then that can kind of center you and take that fear down just enough so that it doesn't lead to, you know, you traveling all over the world with your 8-year-old.
And I want to get into a pushback to that in just a second, but to kind of balance what you're saying, like one of the things I tell people all the time is we all know that stat that 70% of kids quit playing by the time they're 13. If our kids can just learn to love the game, whatever the sport is, and learn to love putting the work in, then by the time, and they're not pushed too much at 8, 9 years old, then they're going to be the ones still playing at 14 because they still love the game. And so there's this, I've had a conversation recently with somebody about how their kid is playing like 4 nights a week and on the weekend at 10 years old. I'm like, well, that kid's going to be done playing by the time they're 14. That's just what it is. They're going to be burned out more than likely. And if the kid who is playing for the love of it right now can continue to really love that sport and learn to work at it, then if they haven't been burnt out, it doesn't matter how great they are at 9 years old because they're going to be the ones still wanting to pursue it at 15 and not the ones that are burnt out.
It's a long game. I mean, you're essentially playing the long game. It's the short, you know, what satisfies me, makes me feel good in the moment is maybe having the best 8-year-old in, you know, youth baseball or what have you, versus how do I develop the underlying intrinsic skills and joy and motivation and love of the sport, which is going to carry that athlete through. And actually in my most recent book, Win the Inside Game, I tell the story of my journey as a runner. Everybody knows, you know, who knows me knows like I was a very successful, especially in high school and ran in college and a little bit after, runner. And they all assume like, oh, Steve must have loved running from the get-go. But the reality is I remember in 5th grade, which I don't know how old you are in 5th grade, maybe 10, 11.
11,
yeah.
11.
Somewhere in that range. I remember we got signed up. You had to run the mile, right, in PE class. And I was a soccer player. I loved soccer at that point, right? I just loved doing it, enjoying it. playing it. That's what I cared about. But because I played soccer, I was also a pretty good runner. So we run the PE mile. I come just a couple seconds shy of breaking the elementary school record. And the PE teacher's like, holy crap, this is great. Like, you should run some more. And in fact, if you go, join a track club and train, we'll let you take another shot at the record in a couple weeks or a month or whatever it was. And I go home and I'm like, Dad, guess what? I almost broke this record. And if I broke the record, I get my name on the board in the cafeteria. Wouldn't that be cool? And he's like, great. And what did they say? They say, we need to train. I don't know what that means. So what happens is like,
what year was this?
This was, when was this? This was 1990s. Right?
Okay, so yeah, the amount of training accessible in 1990.
No, this was like pre-internet stuff, right? I would have been like 1994 or something like that. This isn't like, no one knows what they're doing. My dad wasn't like a hardcore runner, so no one knows what they're doing. So what do we do?
He's going out to the drugstore to get Running Magazine to figure out what to say.
Yeah. So we, joined the local thing, and the first training was essentially, hey, I want you to run as hard as you can, because no one knows what they're doing with kids. So I run as hard as I can during that practice and just exhaust myself. And I remember going to my dad and saying, this sport sucks. Like, this sport sucks. Soccer is fun. What do you do? What are you talking about? And what happened is my dad was like, yeah, I can see why I can understand that. And he's like, you don't have to go try and break this record. And he let me quit. He's like, go back to playing soccer. I'm like, yes, that's where I'm headed. So I didn't, and the funny thing is, like, I quit. I didn't go after the record. But once I got to like 8th and 9th grade, I just happened to like get involved with the cross country and track team, which was a lot more funner. And we had some coaches who kind of knew what they're doing and took us along gradually. And I eventually fell in love with that sport. But I guarantee you, if my dad would have said, no, Steve, you need to go break this record.
You have so much potential. Yes. I'm going to push you to get to greatness.
I would have burned out and never been a runner, because I would have had such a negative experience with the thing versus finding it on my own at some point later where it's like, oh, this actually isn't that bad. Like, this can be enjoyable in this space. And I enjoyed it. And I think I tell that lesson because I think so often when we see our kid has talent in something, we're just like, oh gosh, this is it. The holy grail. They're good at something. We must go all in on this. And often when you do that, and I've seen this, I got my start coaching high school cross country and track way back in the day, is I would see parents who did that early on, and you get the kid in high school, and even then, if they made it to high school, they're just barely hanging on, and you're like, well, I can see your talent, but we're never going to get that to flourish because you hate this thing.
Right. Yeah, I told a story on social recently that my son's first soccer game, we won 4-3. His first soccer game this year. We were down 3-1, came back and won 4-3. He scored 2 of the 4 goals. So he played a great game. And I think he had an assist as well. So was right involved with all of it. We don't allow Fortnite a ton in our house. He can only play it on the weekends for a couple hours each day, but he loves playing Fortnite. So the night of the game, I'm tucking him into bed saying prayers. And part of the prayer was, thank you that he played such a great game today and had so much fun playing it. And after the prayer, he's like, how'd you know I played so great? I'm like, dude, I'm your dad and your coach. I was there. He goes, oh, I thought you were talking about Fortnite. I forgot that we played earlier today. And like, the kid loves soccer. Last night we were out in the driveway for 45 minutes and he's working on goalie drills and he doesn't even play goalie. He loves soccer, but he's 8 and he has other things that he likes. And if I was to sit there and force soccer at him all the time, by the time he's in 6th grade, he's done. He's not even trying out for middle school. And so it was just a reminder that, like, we can't make this more than it actually is.
That's such a good example, and that's so spot on. And I think what often happens is we forget to
They're freaking kids?
Yes, we forget they're kids, and we forget to see it through their lens. And my wife is an elementary school teacher, so like she informs me on all this. She's much better than I am on all this, but elementary school teachers see it because what do they see? They see little Johnny is like, they read a book about, I don't know, policemen, and all of a sudden little Johnny for the next week is like, I'm going to be a cop. I want to be a cop. Like, get me the hat, get me the uniform, whatever have you. And then like a week later, you read a book about, I don't know, zoo animals, and now they're obsessed about pandas, right? And we're just like, wait a minute, like I thought a cop was it. And sometimes we forget that like kids are expert and world class at like exploring and moving on and shifting, whereas adults,
they're the most curious people in the world.
Bingo. And if we stifle that curiosity by saying, okay, we're going to create these constraints. Travel soccer is all you're going to do every weekend, and this is all you're going to care about, and we're going to practice, and we're going to make it where it seems like dad and mom only care about you when you're playing this game. What we've done is we've just killed their greatest gift, which is that curiosity, that ability to explore, that ability to bounce around and say, hey, like this looks interesting, let's go do this thing. Because that exploration is at the core of developing their intrinsic motivation and joy and love of things to understand it. It's also at the core of later on allowing them, when they develop and grow, to be able to go deep. Because if you've explored wide enough, then you understand and see the world, and you can say, okay, you know what? I probably do want to like play soccer at a higher level because I tried basketball, I tried football, I tried art and singing or dance or whatever it is, and this is the thing that has kept my attention, so I must like want to do it some more, and you bring that motivation towards it.
So let's look at the reality. I mean, that's the ideal. That's the intellectual. The reality in so many environments, unfortunately, is a high school coach is involved with a club. And if you don't get into his club at 10 years old and play up through the middle school ranks and all that, you're never going to play high school. And unfortunately, we've got fourth graders thinking about their varsity careers in 45 years. So how do we balance that? The realities of, we know we don't need to specialize too early because elite athletes don't exist before puberty. But the people in the jobs that will control my kid's possible future are pushing this because they have a financial advantage to gain in this. Those two things are competing. So how do we walk that balance out?
Absolutely. So I think step one is define why you want your kid to potentially play high school sports. And I think this is really important because too often I think parents say, oh, I want my kid to be really good at high school sports so that he can then, or he or she can then potentially get that college scholarship, and then that'll save money and blah, 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 et cetera, down that path. I mean, that's one reason. And of course, college is way too expensive, so there's some truth in that. The other is, I want my kid to play high school sports because he enjoys it. She has it'll be a good friend group around them. It will teach them things about being resilient and winning and losing and how to bounce back and how to, give effort and all the things that we believe about sport. I think step one is defining like, what is the purpose? Like, what are you hoping to get out of this? And then once that is there, you keep that front and center and you say, okay, if that is it, and we have these gatekeepers, how do we manage this? And I think
that's what they are, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what they are. And I think it depends on a couple things. First off, I'll say this, is if you end up with that kid who is good enough, who was blessed with the right talent and some work ethic, I guarantee you that gatekeeper is going to open up the door for that kid even if he doesn't play on the team. So that's step one.
That's the unfair reality.
That's the unfair reality. Yeah.
Talent. If your kid's talented enough, when they get to the level, the coach is going to want them regardless of everything else.
Yes. So you have to understand. And again, I'm not telling you to judge your fourth grader or fifth grader, but like there is a reality of that, and you need to just be aware of that. So I think the other part is if you go through all this exercise and you say, hey, there's a gatekeeper. Every school it differs. Some are soft, some are strict, some are you literally know if I don't play on this club team, I'm never going to get to this unless I'm the LeBron James of the team, and they're just like, whatever, let them in. I think it comes down to this: is if high school sports matters not only to more so to your child, and they have this goal, then what you have to say is, how are we going to do this in a way that doesn't make us lose our sanity and doesn't make our child hate it? And I think that is, again, it's tricky to talk about this because it depends on the individual level. And what I would say in this regard is...
Let me interrupt real quick because my individual level, I live in a town, like our state has 4 divisions in high school. My high school is a 2A school. So multi-sport athletes who only play the sport that is in season is possible where I live. If I move 25 minutes down the road, that's one of the larger 4A schools in the state. And to get on the team is a whole different ballgame because there's 2.5 times more kids competing for the spots.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's where I think that's a perfect example is you got to understand where you're headed, right? And I think that comes into it. So for your situation, you're in a spot where you don't, what I would say is like, don't stress it as much as other people. Like, why would you? Because
we've balanced the idea. Like, do we want to move to the area I was just talking about? Yeah. Because that high school has so many opportunities that our kids could have. Like my daughter does dance as well. Dance is a physical education elective at that school. My son's never playing high school varsity soccer at that school. We're not going to pump the money, just values as a family. No. We're not going to pump the money into the training, and his genetics probably aren't what it is there. Like they're one of the top soccer teams in the state, but at our high school, all you got to do is still want to play.
Yep.
We won our league last year, but we don't have a JV team. So we need the numbers. He might be the 18th person on the bench as a junior, but he's still on the team if that's what he wants. And Bingo. So the stakes are a lot different in terms of where we are versus where we could be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think those are the conversations and the ideas you have to have is like for the values and stuff you want to instill on your kids and the opportunities you want to give them is like what actually matters. And what I would encourage people if they're in that chasing the 4A and, I need to do all this stuff to give my kid a shot to make it. I would step back and be like, A, is that what they want? Because it better come from them. And if it's coming from you, then it doesn't matter. Like that's step one. Is that what they want? B, if that's what they want, are you okay with them quitting and pivoting at some point? Because
they're kids.
Because they're kids. Because I think the other thing that often happens in those situations, the 4A, the state, best in the state, is parents start saying, okay, my child wants to go try and play soccer in a couple years in high school. I'm going to help them, support them, which is fine. But what happens is then they start investing. And then that kid says, you know what? Soccer sounded great, but I really want to join the track team instead. And the parent goes, but we spent the last 3 years, investing all this finances and money and stuff like that. If you put that on your kid, you're going to make them miserable. And then they're going to keep going in soccer because they feel the pressure and anxiety of a 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-old trying to satisfy mom and dad because they think, oh my gosh, they invested all this money, time, et cetera into this. I have to do this. And then it's not going to end well. So you as a parent have to decide, okay, if this is the path we're going down, like we've got to be okay and able to pivot and change and other things like that. And the last thing I'll say on this is I'll say like I'm biased in this, but I have this idea of, for the most part, if a kid wants to make it and they're blessed with, just enough talent, they'll eventually figure it out. Meaning, yeah, I get it, the coaching, all of this stuff, blah, blah, blah. But what I've seen, again, when I coach track and cross country, so it's a little bit different. But what I saw is the kids who, even if I saw, I don't know if this kid's going to make the varsity. But if that kid, for whatever reason, was hooked up and dedicated enough, they would surprise you, and they'd have, they'd come through or get pretty dang close.
If they're the hard worker, if they're the kid who loves it, they may not ever play in the game, but most coaches will find a spot for that kid on the team because that kid's going to make the team better.
Bingo. And that's what, and it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. What instills that? A love of the sport, a love of the game, like an intrinsic motivation where you're like, hey, I enjoy this. It's about, I want to see how good I can be. I want to see if I can get better. It doesn't come from mom or dad forcing me to do this. It doesn't come from private lessons every day to get better at this. It's got to come from that kid. And that's why I say, I tell parents, I wouldn't stress it as much as you are because, again, I've been in that spot as a high school coach and then later as a college coach, is you see that kid who is might not quite be good enough, but they love the thing and they just bring that work ethic. You're like, I want this kid on the team because he might not ever get into the game. He might not ever make the varsity track team and be at a meet, but that kid is going to spread that energy and he's going to make everybody else better. And you're going to find a spot for them. And that's why those underlying ingredients matter so much.
We could spend forever on that, but I got two more things I want to throw out here. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and completely pivot. This next part is from your book, and I think it's in Win the Anti-Game. So I'm quoting from there. It's about underperformance is self-protection. And this is what you wrote. You said, under-preparation is a coping strategy to protect our sense of self. Not giving our all is about shielding our ego from harm. When we feel uncertain, insecure, or under threat, we respond by desperately trying to make ourselves and the world add up. When we can't hold ourselves to our or others' ideals, we experience shame, humiliation, and embarrassment. We give ourselves an out, crafting a story that minimizes negative feelings and keeps alive our view of ourselves. I read that and I'm like, oh, that's me as a kid. I related to that. I think it's my daughter right now too. And if I'm honest, it was me until about 5 years ago, until I went through some counseling and really learned some stuff about myself. So the more I'm around young kids, the more I believe that this generation of kids growing up are so scared to fail that they don't even try. And they make up excuses about not even being interested in it when you know they do, or not caring when you know they do, because they're so scared of failing. So how do we help our kids get past this fear so that not even necessarily experience greatness, but so that they can just go after hard things in general?
You are spot on. And I'm going to tell you why that
What's
is.
your words, dude?
No. I mean, my words are spot on, but no, you're spot on this generation of kids. And the reason is this, is think of it like this, is, I'll use an example from my life, is I talked about my elementary school mile. Here's the real deal, is my wife and I were different ages, competed in different places, but her mile time in elementary school was faster than mine. And if we somehow put us together in the same spot in the same school, and I lost to, this might sound a little, whatever, piss some people off.
You lost to a girl.
But if I lost to a girl, I would have been like, I'm not good at running. I suck at this.
Not she's good. Not she's good.
I suck at this, right? And the reason I use that example is because our ability to try to give effort is largely based on how we perceive the world and how we compare to others. And back in the day when you and I grew up, our comparison point was small. It was, the 25 kids in our class or whatever it has, or maybe the 100 kids in our grade. Nowadays, what has happened is kids have a comparison point that is so freaking large that it's impossible. And second of all, because of social media, because of the interconnected world, it feels like we're always performing on a stage. And what we know from the literature on sports psychology and choking is that we don't choke in practice. We choke when we're on a stage and that pressure gets to us. And I think the reason that we feel or we see kids have this fear of failure more now than ever is because of that bigger comparison point, the fact that it feels like we're always performing in front of someone and going to be judged about it, that the default answer is, well, why try? Why put myself out there? Why? And I think what we have to do as parents is to reframe things and get kids to understand that it is okay to fail. And I think that's a couple different ways. First, are you role modeling it? Are you doing things that you're not good at? Are your kids seeing you do things that, hey, I might not know how to do this podcast thing, but I'm going to give it a go, right? I'm not world class at this yet, but I'm gonna try it. Let's see what happens. Or how are you reacting after they lose or fail? Are you making them feel like, oh my gosh, this is end of the world. I don't know how you lost that game or you missed that pitch or whatever have you. If you're doing that, that kid's gonna shrink and protect, right? We've got to give them the freedom to do so and fail. And then the third thing I think is they've got to experience it. And often they've got to experience it younger than we think. So the problem I often see is parents realize this and they're like, oh my gosh, my kid in high school forgot his homework or essay or whatever it is, and if he doesn't do this, he's gonna this is a major grade and he's gonna fail the class. I need to go bring it up to him. The reality is that kid should have learned what it meant to forget their work at home when they were in 5th grade. Mm-hmm. When it didn't matter, because 5th grade, I mean, whatever. It's you get a poor grade in 5th grade, it's whatever, we're gonna make it up. But if it's 12th grade and it matters for your college entrance, whatever, it matters more. So the point is, we should look for opportunities earlier in life and then support them in a way that shows that, yeah, failure happens, but it's not the end of the world. You're gonna bounce back. There are other opportunities. Life goes on, and it is okay. And if we can do those things, then our kid isn't going to self-protect. They're going to say, okay, I get to take a risk here and see what I'm capable of. And if it doesn't work out, life goes on and we'll find a new path.
And that's the beauty of sports, if we do it right, because it's the safest place to figure out how to fail. And one of the videos that we did that went viral is from Lindsay Nadler, who is a mental performance coach. She's incredible. But it's all about how parents should tell their kids that I will match your energy, but I am not going to be the one to push you all the time. I will support you. I will help you, but you've got to drive this bus. And so many parents are pushing back to that saying, well, kids don't know what to do. Kids are going to do all these excuses for why kids shouldn't be driving the bus. And I'm like, at what point do we let them experience the consequences of not wanting to train, of not wanting to get up and do it? Do we want them to experience that when they get to their freshman year in college because we pushed them so hard and now they're away from home and they're not giving it at all and their scholarship's on the line and they hate it? And so they're part of I think it's 30 or 40% of D2 and below kids don't play their full 4 years because mom and dad pushed them. And they get there and it's oh yeah, I don't feel like working this hard anymore. It wasn't an intrinsic thing. So do you want them to experience that in 4th grade or in 7th grade? Then you realize, hey, I didn't make the team as a 7th grader. I need to work harder. not mom and dad need to push me harder. I need to work harder because I don't want to feel that consequence again. Or do you want them to learn that in 11th grade and end up wherever they are?
Well, this is the point. And again, I coached college track at the University of Houston for years. And inevitably, we would see this. You would very quickly identify early on who were the kids whose parents like forced them to get up and go to practice, who drove them to practice, and made sure that they were there every day doing the thing, etc. Because once that parent was gone, those kids stopped showing up, right? They didn't see, oh, if I don't train, like, I'm not going to be able to perform. If I don't perform, it's college. Like, you're probably not going to get your spot on your team. It's going to go bye-bye, etc. And sometimes the scholarship with it. And that's just the reality of it. But you would literally see it. And this is why I think...
And you would know by September.
Oh, absolutely. You would know, first month of it, you'd be like, this is it. And we would look for this stuff, honestly, on recruiting trips. We would look and see who, if the parent was like doing all the talking about how they wanted to, their child to do this and how, little Johnny wanted to accomplish this and this, or if it was the kid. Was the kid lighting up? Were his eyes lighting up when they were like, you're like, I really want to compete on this level, Or was it the parent doing all the stuff? And you could see it sometimes, not always, but you could see that often. And that would mean like, we had a problem here on being able to sustain it for the next level. And the point is, sport is a wonderful way to learn this in what I think is a low consequence environment. Because in the end of the day, no one really cares if, little Susie makes the, high school varsity team as an 11th grader or not. Right? No one's going to say, hey, this defines your life. It doesn't, right? In academics, like, whether you get a good enough SAT to, get into the colleges that you want, like that has a little bit bigger of an impact. So this is why I think sport is the perfect environment to learn how to fail, how to fall short, and then get back on the horse. And this is why sometimes I feel like parents, again, that I've worked with, that I know that are good people, they'll come to me and be like, oh, they missed, like, my son missed the ninth grade, making the team. This is just devastating for him. And I was like, yeah, in the short term, it might feel like this. But if we were to zoom out, this might be the best thing that ever happens to this kid. Because he realizes, do I care enough to put in the work to change the outcome?
The story I always tell with that is a guy named Jordan. He was a year older than me in school, and we played Little League together. I was on his Little League team in majors, which is 10 to 12 years old. He got cut from baseball in 7th grade, got cut from baseball in 8th grade. When he went to 9th grade, brand new high school opened up. And the middle school coach happened to move over and be the JV coach there. Cut him again in 9th grade. But Jordan didn't give up. He loved baseball. He kept playing. He finally made JV as a sophomore. And then junior year, went up, played varsity, never got on the field. Senior year, he was the starting second baseman for the first year that high school ever made it to the state playoffs.
Wow.
All because he loved the sport and he never gave up. And I don't know what Jordan's doing now. I haven't talked to him in years, but his dad was a coach. His dad instilled a love of the game in him, and he supported him and helped him throughout all of that to not give up on it. And eventually it didn't get there the way most people get there or people think you should, but he got that letter for the letter jacket just like everyone else. He got to play in that conference championship game and win just like everyone dreams of. It just took a little bit longer for him to get there.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And that's what I think it is. And in actuality, if you look at how do we develop resilience, that's it. And what do we want as parents, right? This is what I think it comes back to is like, yeah, we might want the accolades or achievements or what have you, but what we really want is to instill these values in our kids because Even sport is going to end at some point. Even if you're one of the best of the best, it's going to end at some point. And we want those values, that characteristics, that work ethic, that resilience, that ability to be a good teammate. We want those things throughout life. And how do you instill those in the exact way that it seems like Jordan did, right? And his parents did. And I think that is what we should take away versus like, I've got to pave my way. I've got to force my way through here to get these, check the box on these accolades that I want for my kid.
So we've talked about not specializing so young because elite athletes don't exist at 9 years old. We've talked about how learning to fail is so important. There's one more piece that I want to talk with you about that is a big deal in today's culture, and it's probably the post that got sent to me the most. It's the one that went viral on Fortnite being the new Sandlot. And you wrote about this in chapter 3 of Win the Inside Game, and I want to read part of the thread just to catch people up that haven't seen it. You wrote, Fortnite is the new Sandlot. Kids have retreated to video games because it's the one place where adults can't interfere, control, or critique. And it's the one place where they can find autonomy and connection. That used to be sports, but adults ruined it. Bring back play. Research shows kids don't play outside anymore. One survey found a decrease from 80% of kids in my parents' generation playing outside to just 27% today. Yes, phones, an increase in traffic, and similar factors have an impact, but research also points to another culprit, safetyism. An increase in parents' protectiveness due to fear and a high need for control has led to decline in unstructured free play. We've replaced pickup games with leagues, natural play in the yard or local parks with structured and rule-bound activities driven by adult egos and desires. Play frees us up. It helps us learn who we are in an environment where we can fail and screw up. Kids play kickball at recess even if they are terrible because there's no mom, dad, or coach there to critique. Play provides a space and environment to explore, mess up, and connect without fear taking over. In a world where we are constantly judged, we need activities where it doesn't matter if we are good. We've convinced ourselves that everything we do has to have a productive outcome. We need more meaningful activities without a specific aim. We need more activities where the point is to explore and enjoy, not achieve an outcome. Now, there's a lot there, and I cut even more out when I kind of synthesized that. And I think most people listening to this podcast would agree with your premise. So instead of me asking a direct question about that, what I would love to hear from you, because that's the one that went viral, that's the one that had the most pushback. What's the response been to that general idea that you've observed from putting that idea out into the world?
You either love it or you hate it. I mean, this is the internet. It's either people get it and they say, yeah, you're right. Or the pushback was this. I got so many comments and messages and emails that said, I hear ya, but the world is dangerous. We can't have kids out playing. And I get that, but I think what I would say to that is this. Is if you look at the data, the world was more dangerous than when you and I grew up. Mm-hmm. You know, the data on the 80s, 90s, not so good. Nowadays, much better across the board. Again, this is going to depend where you live, but in the United States as a whole, that's what the data tells us. I think one of the reasons we have to acknowledge is it feels more dangerous because in the 80s and 90s, we were oblivious. Because you didn't get your neighborhood app telling you that, someone stole a package off the front yard or whatever it is. Like, you didn't get all these apps and things telling you danger, danger, danger all the way. And our brain is meant to consume things locally, meaning it's meant to say, hey, we didn't have the internet, so if someone told us something bad happened, it must have happened near us. But the reality is often, so what happens is we over-index on the fear and the anxiety that brings us. So that's step one. Step two is I'm not asking you to, go let your kid run off and do whatever for miles and miles and miles. What we're asking for is just like, how do we bring back, playing pickup basketball at the local park? How do we have, baseball sandlot games at the park down the street? How do we bring back street hockey in the neighborhood or the cul-de-sac or whatever have you? And I think there are ways to do that, or even playing in the front freaking yard. I think there are ways to do that without people freaking out, without worrying about if your child's going to get abducted or not. And my point is, a lot of this critique was like your own fear and anxiety as a parent, which I get it totally as a parent, but you have to understand, when is that founded and when is that not? Because if we wanted to protect our children, we would just say, hey, I'm going to wrap you up in a bubble and keep you in a cage, and like no one's ever going to get you. But that would be a miserable existence that did not serve them well. So at some point, we have to give them some sort of a little bit of freedom and autonomy in, a relatively safe way.
The piece of that I've added before is our current culture is not built for kids to do those things. Even if you take away the fear, the safetyism of liability insurance for a city park. The basketball courts are locked up today because unless you sign a waiver saying you won't sue if your kid breaks their arm, you can't get on the basketball court because the city can't afford the insurance otherwise. Or the example I've used, I lived 1.5 miles from my local park. It took me about 10 minutes to ride my bike there. And I remember I would go out of my house down the road. I would turn down, it was 1 mile on an old farm road. And there was a horse farm that was most of that road until you got to a retirement home and then you got to the park. And it was completely safe for me to ride my bike. There have been 400 houses put on that road in the last 5 years, with another 200 being added right now. So you've got 600 cars driving that, at minimum, driving that road a day that weren't there when I was a kid. Have they extended the road and added a bike lane? No. Are there sidewalks? Not one bit. So would I let my 9-year-old ride their bike to the park in the same way that I did? No, because that's one of those places where it isn't safe. And we haven't built our areas for kids to go out and do that because we're scared of the safety issues and the liability insurance. And so it's all this giant thing that comes together.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. The reality is we need a societal push to do things like open up the, playgrounds at our elementary schools without them having to fear huge liability issues. We need to be able to not lock down our high school football fields or tracks, but open up to the public after school.
Open up the tennis courts.
Open up the tennis courts. And I'm 100% with you. We've done a really, really poor job of that.
And I understand why we don't. So I want to share, there's an understanding of why, but also an understanding of the reality of the negative consequences that this has led to.
Yep, absolutely. It's a tricky situation on both ends. And what I would say is, for people to say, well, I can't change society, totally get it. What I would say on that is I would look for opportunities and to figure out how in your local community you can bring back some spaces for play for the kids. Maybe that's as simple as hey, we're going to rotate. I'm going to, parents are going to bring some of our kids to the park that we can drive to. And then we're going to give them a soccer ball and say, hey, here's some area, have at it. Mom and dad are going to go walk far away around the park. We'll be here, but we're not watching this game, right? And it's trying to figure out how to do the small things that allow kids to have the spaces like they do at recess for, again, only 15 minutes or whatever have you, because we shrunk that, but like they do at recess at school, where it's the teacher's there, but no teacher is watching all these kids besides making sure that,
no one dies.
No one dies. They're thinking, thank God I have a short break before I have to go back and be on stage and do things again. And I think we've got to think of, okay, our society, yes, we face this safetyism. Yes, we face this liability issue. But how do we create more spaces for kids that, again, are relatively safe, but give them the opportunity to lead and explore versus like, an adult always being there dictating. And the way I like to think of it is this is the example I'll give is like, if you go to organize soccer game, there is a adult or a teenage ref that is directing things. If you go to a pickup game, it changes the dynamics because the kids have to figure out, how do we enforce things? What do we care about? Like, how are we going to navigate these conflicts? And they learn a whole heck of a lot more. And what you'll see is the underlying motivation. And this is why I think play is so important. What did you do whenever you were playing a pickup basketball, soccer, whatever have you game, and the score got lopsided? You didn't say, oh man, we're dominating. No, you changed up the teams to make it competitive because the goal was, yeah, we want to win, but the goal was to have fun, which you knew if we can make this like keep going and competitive and close, it's going to be a whole heck of a lot more fun for us. So the underlying motivation is often different than in a completely organized game where adults drive, hey, we got to win, we got to win, we got to win.
And the hard reality for us as parents is, I'm not speaking ill of our parents, so please don't hear that, but our parents sent us out and into the world. We did the things because they wanted some time to themselves. That's not possible anymore. So what this is going to take is us investing some time to say, you know what, for an hour on Sunday, I'm going to organize pick up Saturday soccer or pick up Sunday soccer. I'm going to maybe spend $100 on some pop-up goals of my own. I'll go set them up for the kids and I'll be around so that if anyone gets hurt, someone's there. I'll be walking the park. I'll be sitting in the car. And so, yes, it's going to be less convenient for us. It's going to take some time commitments for us that we don't have much time to begin with. So none of this is easy. None of this is convenient. But for us to raise healthy kids, it's going to take work because healthy is never convenient. Like healthy always takes work, whether it's physical health, emotional health, social health, like spiritual health, whatever it is, like it's going to take work to become healthy. And so we have to figure out, okay, what can I do in my neighborhood or my community? It doesn't have to be the biggest thing in the world. It can be 10 kids. It can be 6 kids, whatever it is. Like I remember playing pickup wiffle ball in the front yard with our neighbors. Like one guy was my age, one guy was my brother's age. And it was 2v2 pickup wiffle ball. And we played and we competed. And to your fairness standpoint, I had the other guy's brother on my team because he was better than my brother and his brother was better than me. So if we put the two brothers together, it would have been unfair. So we flipped it and we competed. So like, I just think it's really important for us to talk about the idea of play. And the flip side of that is the Fortnite conversation, because so many people we know that parents have been too lackadaisical in giving their kids access to the internet and online games. In return, we've seen the pendulum swing all the way back over to video games are inherently bad. Don't let them play. They're unsafe. There's some tension there. Like I mentioned this earlier in the episode. My son can play Fortnite on Saturday and Sunday, and we have a 2-hour time limit on it. Sometimes we'll give him a little bit more, but he only gets to play some. And we've locked the thing down completely. No chat. He cannot add friends unless we approve it. Like it's age appropriate. He can't do some of the obvious that he wants to do because they're 13 and above and he's only 8. And we're not going to let him do that. So like the toxicity of the video games is in the dose. It's not necessarily the video game itself. And to give kids, if that is the new playground, which I agree with you that it is, we have to put some safety mechanisms in there, but still not be overbearing in that.
Bingo. I mean, you summed it up well. I think sometimes when we have these conversations, we default towards the extremes. And people say, oh, it's all video games. Video games are the worst. I remember hearing that as an argument, even back in the 90s, right?
Sega Genesis in 1999 when MLB 2000 came out. Like, I remember, like, these kids are playing too many video games.
That's it. It's not the video games. They're just another tool. It's the dose, how you're using them, and then nowadays, like, you know, again, how interconnected and free in terms of connection to other things are you allowing it? And you have to be able to set some the way I like to think of it is this. How do we set appropriate constraints that allows them to be free within those constraints?
It's the sandbox.
Yep.
How do we build the walls of the sandbox so that it's a barrier to keep them safe and to keep the outside from coming in while still letting them do whatever the heck they want to do in the sandbox?
Bingo. That's it. That's the whole key.
All right. 2 questions left. I end every episode with these 2 questions because they're so much fun. One of my favorite things to do when I get smart people around me is ask, what have I not asked that I needed to ask? So in your mind, and we can, beauty of editing is I can edit out your ums and everything in your thinking, but what's the one question I haven't asked today that you think healthy sports parents need to hear or need to hear the answer to?
I think it's this, and I kind of touched on it, but I think the question I get all the freaking time is but I need my kid to get that college scholarship. All the time. And while I understand that, and I empathize with that because college is so freaking expensive, what I say there is the reality is that's very rare. And if that kid has the opportunity to do that, it's going to come down to him or her. And you don't need to worry about it. Because parents are being exploited by the machine for the real fear of, oh my God, college costs so much. And then some coach or other person tells you, well, I'm going to give you the free ticket here. And what happens is you end up spending way more money that if you just save that up, it probably would have lightened the burden off of it, and you get taken for a ride.
And the hard part is if you pay enough money, someone will tell you your kid's good enough.
Bingo. And that's it. You're not going to get an objective understanding. And I felt bad. I saw this all the time as a college coach where someone tells me, hey, my kid, so-and-so coach told me that my kid could make it at this level. And, I'd sit there and watch and I'd be like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, they sold you a bill of goods, and I'm not trying to put down your kid, but like from an objective standpoint, like I've been in this for a long time. I know what I can see. And I think that's the answer. So to me, it's like, don't play the college chasing game, right? And especially don't play it early. So if they're good enough, eventually it will find out. And if they're good enough eventually, that's when you start saying, okay, we're going to start exploring. What's it take? Who do I contact? But that if you're being sold that as an answer, like run away or don't pay the money.
We had on Sarah Lessig, who's a high school senior out in Seattle right now. She's signed to go to Princeton next year to play basketball. She didn't play travel until like after her sophomore year, either freshman or sophomore year, and she couldn't afford it. And that's part of her story is that they couldn't afford to play travel as a young kid, so she played every sport possible. Like she was the quarterback of the girls' flag football team. She played baseball with the boys. She played little league baseball and even played JV baseball her freshman and sophomore years. Like she picked up skateboarding during COVID. Like if you're good enough, you're gonna get found out. Like
yeah. I mean, that's the key is college coaches and like we have an incentive to find good people and often find good people under the radar. So part of my job was to say, okay, yeah, I see all the really good people who everyone is like yelling and screaming about and come from the top programs in the state. And I'd be like, no, I want to find the guy from the 1A school who just started track as a junior, who played baseball and soccer and whatever else, And it's like maybe their performance isn't at that level yet, but you're just like, oh my gosh, this person has so much untapped potential. Like, get them on board. So that's why I tell people all the time is like, if they're good enough, it's gonna work out. Like, stop stressing it.
And the reality is, even with the House settlement rules changing scholarships for Division I athletes, the way it breaks down is 6% of high school players play in college, 2% play D1, the other 4% play below Division I. So Division I's going to where everyone who plays will have a full scholarship. That's great. I love that. Good for them. But 2/3 of the kids who play in college are not playing Division I. And they're all going to get more academic money than they are athletic money. And that's the reality of the system. That's not my opinion. Like Division III doesn't even give athletic scholarships. Division II gives partials. They're going to get more money from academics than athletics. So chasing the scholarship, like you can't chase it for financial reasons.
No, exactly. It's just not a game that you play. So
if you want to chase it because your kid wants to play in college and that like they want to compete at that level, by all means, go for it. But if you're chasing it for the financial benefit, go put that money in a 529 and find the college that they want to go to otherwise.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
All right, last question for you. I always like to end each episode with an encouragement. So put yourself in the shoes of the parent who they don't have a clue what they're doing. They're just trying to support their kid in the best way possible and to make the most out of this journey, whether they're 5 years old or 15 or 18, whatever. How would you encourage that parent as they walk through this period known as youth sports?
It's hard. So step one is acknowledging it's hard. You're going to be pulled in multiple directions. But what I would say to encourage you is like, go back to what we talked about at the beginning is like, what do you hope to get out of this for your kid? Is it those values, the integrity, the motivation, the joy, the team, the work ethic? If that's what it is, like no matter what, keep coming back to those things and be like, is youth sports instilling this? Is how we're supporting instilling this? And if it starts going off the rails, it starts going to some of this like shiny objects or whatever have you, like think of how do I pull that back? And if you do that, guess what? It's going to be a good experience. And also I would say is, like as parents, we often take it more seriously than the kids do. So zoom out.
My kid playing Fortnite.
Yeah, that's what it is. Like it might feel like life or death if this kid makes the, whatever travel team, but it's not. Like life is going to go on. Life is going to be fine. And if they want to, if they really care and love the sport and have that, then even if they don't make the team, then they're going to be that kid who just comes back and says, hey, I really like this. I really care about this. Let's work. Let's come back. And chances are they'll probably make it at some point. And more so, they'll have that grit and work ethic instilled versus if you made it the life or death to make the team or not.
Awesome, Steve. Thanks so much for being with us today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was a blast.
That's it for today's episode. If you like the show today, stop what you're doing right now and go pick up Steve's newest book, Win the Inside Game. After you do that, make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. If you're listening to Apple Podcasts, it would be a huge help for you to write up a small review. If you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button as well. You can get all of Steve's contact information in the show description for today if you want to follow him on social. If this episode has helped you in any way, the best way you can help us grow the show is sharing it with a friend. Most of all, we hope you have a great week watching your kids play the sport they love. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon.